Well, hey, I think we're about ready to get going here. We have a full house today, and I wanted to thank everybody, both the panelists and those who have taken the time to join us in the Summer of ABM. This is an exciting presentation that we have going on today. It's very, very interactive, so our intention, our hope, is that you'll come in and participate with us. So we're going to be tweeting at the same time using the hashtag Summer of ABM. We have you'll notice in the bottom of the right-hand corner of the screen, every screen will have some contextual information about how you can tweet a hashtag, a handle for somebody who's speaking, however that may be. Also, you'll notice within your interface, where you can control your muting and things like that, there's a section where you can ask questions. And while we will be not having questions along the way, we're going to be storing these up. So as you think of something, please put that into the question dialog box within the GoToWebinar interface. Everybody should have that. Generally, it's on the right-hand side of your screen. And so we will gather as many questions as we can along the way and address those as fully as we can before we get to the end of the hour. So this is jam-packed, amazing. We really have a full crowd. We have some great speakers up today. Rob Israq, he's the Chief Marketing Officer at Typalti. I've known Rob for a number of years, and he's just a fantastic marketer. He's going to go through his case study of how he brought ABM into his organization. And that is, after all, the topic of today. So I'm going to take one moment here to emphasize the point that this is a topic that virtually every ABM focused marketer can benefit from. The idea that you can take your program either from a starting position and set the trajectory to better momentum, or that you can rebuild your program and have it inspire performance along the way. So Rob is going to be talking about Typalti and his exercise that he had there in terms of pulling up an ABM program. Really a great story. Myself, Mark Ockney, EVP at Demand Metric, also the founder of the Account-Based Marketing Consortium. We have along with us Srihari Kumar, founder and CEO of ZenIQ. And thanks for the wave there, buddy. And you may have known him from some of his other platforms that he had founded along the way, including Captora and LeadFormix. Robert Slaughter, hailing from Washington, D.C. area, founder and president of Markestry. And Randy Watson, president and CEO of Bulldog Solutions, hailing from Austin, Texas today. So we have 3 from the Bay Area, 1 from D.C., and 1 from Austin. So we have pretty much a full mix across most of the time zones and geography within the U.S., but knowing that we have a lot of people coming in from Europe as well, I appreciate your taking the end of your day to hopefully enjoy maybe a nice glass of wine and a great presentation here about ABM. So real quickly, this is going to be a standard format of slides as we introduce each person in a topic. I mentioned that I founded the Account-Based Marketing Consortium. Here's our blog. You should come by sometime and subscribe to the blog if you've not yet. We have great content, a lot of video interviews. We have some fantastic research that the consortium and our partners have put together. And today I'm partnering up with this group of people here to bring up a topic that I think is really critical today. And why is that? Why do I think that this is an important topic for today? You know, there's so many truisms that people can't change, regardless of effort, money, time, whatever it may be. There are things that are out there that you personally cannot change. One of them is that even if you do not have an account-based marketing program in place right now, guaranteed 100% of you have people in your sales organization, your SDRs, marketing efforts that have occurred along the way that's already touching people that are in those target accounts that you'd end up selecting. The second is that buying centers, there's only 3.4% of the average enterprise that you absolutely, positively must be able to reach and understand if you've reached them and what that engagement has been. Those are the only people in the organization that are able to influence and make purchase decisions. The third is that the highest performing programs prioritize channels differently. Now we're going to break each of these down real quickly, and the format today is that we'll each have a couple of minutes to to share some ideas that are relevant to the topic at hand. We'll have a little bit of Q&A amongst each other for a moment, and then we'll shift over to Q&A that you guys will, as the audience, will be bringing to us through the chat box. Again, it's the questions chat box within the GoToWebinar interface. So just seek that out and enter any question that you might have. You know, the opportunity here is that I mentioned earlier, 100% of the organizations, you already touch target accounts. The likelihood of creating ABM as a new silo, in other words, just another layer of stuff on top of, you know, exists today. So putting in a display ad program of, you know, targeting accounts on top of other stuff that occurs today, it becomes confusing. Probably is a little bit backwards in terms of its impact that it has on your program overall. But I just grabbed a slide here. This is from Chief Martech. It's the Informatica company. They entered for a marketing stack contest, and I thought this just kind of served the purpose well. In here, you'll notice that you have an automation system, many people. You certainly probably have a CRM system that you're actioning. And within that, you already have knowledge. You have insight that sits inside there. ABM is actually fueled off a continual flow of insights. And what it's able to do as you launch a, quote, official program is it helps you to understand what has happened in the past. By aggregating the data, you're able to help connect the dots, not just for yourself in the delivery of some ads, but maybe also to better inform your email, to better inform your nurturing flows, to better inform SDRs and how and who they call and what they're trying to talk about, and better inform and prioritize for the sales team who it is that they're trying to sell to. Anyways, this is about triggering coordination and about creating insights that you can use to help enable other people in the organization to do these things. The next is that, talking about the 3.4%, this came from Gallup. I think it's a phenomenal slide. It's really fantastic learning. This brings to point that ABM is really a targeting issue. It's CRM driven, and that once you peel down to the level of target accounts, you go down into the buying center, you're dealing with actual people. You're not dealing with anonymous visitors on a website. You have the ability to speak the language of your sales team and get down to that point where you could identify, you can build out your CRM, and you could measure the engagement that you've had against those people that actually influence and make purchase decisions. And within there, you have both the data component, which I talked about, but the marketing components. You know, are you able to market to people? Can you see how it is that they respond? And are you reaching them in the channels that they prefer? Next is media mix. And I hope you can see this. We will certainly have a video and all these things that come out of this presentation today. But top performing ABM programs, this comes from the ABM Consortium and the research that we did last December. There is a clear and concise difference between lower, middle, and high performing programs in terms of how they think of delivery of messages. Top performing programs, email over display ads. Email is their primary means of communicating with their target accounts. That's the next thing you'll notice is that they use more channels. So they use social, they use display, website personalization. The list is really long. And as you move to lower performing ABM programs, they tend to operate in fewer channels and tend to highly prioritize display ads, whether it's reactive or, you know, retargeting or proactive of some form of flavor. But so there's a distinct difference here, and I think that one of the things that this is also representing is the point that I made a moment ago, that this is really kind of a targeting and CRM issue at the heart, at the foundation of building and starting your ABM program. But the next one, I just love this picture here. You know, the idea here is that, you know, the goldfish, that what appears to be a goldfish is actually a shark in your swimming pool. You know, the idea of consistency that you're delivering and the power of what it is that you bring to market is pivotal. It's absolutely and utterly critical. A couple of great points here. This comes from Kapost and McKinsey. The McKinsey research is really phenomenal in this area. But anyways, great customer experience. 5.2 times, that's 520% better in terms of likelihood of purchasing. And then the idea here is really, you know, the average attention span of somebody that you come across through marketing channels is 8 seconds, and that's 1 second less than a goldfish, and it's been dropping by about 4 seconds in total since 2000. So it's not that it's bad, but it's actually getting terrible, and it's getting worse over time. And the idea here, the next, is that B2B buyers use an average of 6 channels. And the more important part here is that, and that's to research vendors, okay? The more important part, though, is that 2/3 of them are left feeling unsatisfied, frustrated, and concerned about the inconsistencies that we're delivering to them right now. So there's a huge upside for us in thinking of ABM not as building that new silo, but as thinking of it as building out a customer engagement process, which is really experiential and works across channels, and is driven from insight, which is housed in your CRM. Now, with that, I'm going to pass the microphone here to Rob Israq, Chief Marketing Officer of Typalti.
Hi there, thanks, Mark. Really good to be on the webinar today. I really appreciate the time. Before I jump into the webinar content, I'll give you a brief background so that you know a little bit of who you're working with. But I've worked at a number of companies over the course of time. General Electric, moved into it. Then about 10 years ago, I suppose, I moved to NetSuite, and I was at NetSuite when they were about 30 million, and kind of grew going public, beyond to a pretty large company. I think I left when they were about 700 million, and I was ready to do it again and join another startup. And at that point, I made the move to Typalti to run marketing for them. So I've kind of been in the space, in the digital marketing space, for a while, and seen it grow up, and started the target account and account-based marketing initiative at NetSuite before I left, and then we've gone really deep in it at Typalti. So I can tell you a little bit more about that on the next slide. So generally speaking, account-based marketing is really important in our marketing mix. I've got about 5 strategic levers, and it's certainly not the case of it being all 5 of those levers, but it's about 40% of those 5. So 2 of those 5 strategic levers are account-based marketing related. One is simply the targeting piece that Mark talked about. Another piece is personalization. Personalization, account-based marketing is one of the best ways to drive a personalized, custom, relevant experience to your prospects. So it's really critical in our mix. However, I'm guessing, like most people on the call, there's a few companies that are fortunate or unfortunate to have 100% account-based marketing mix. I would guess that the vast majority of folks on the call are actually a split, where you have to do content marketing, demand generation, inbound style marketing, as well as account-based marketing. And balancing all 3 of those is a real challenge, and figuring out a metric system and a process that transcends those 3 categories is challenging. So I'll talk a little bit about that and how we have approached that. So why did we approach target account marketing? Why have we made it a significant part of the mix at our company? So Typalti, particularly when I started 2 years ago and built out the marketing organization, our core customer, our top customers, are what we call the digital economy. So think about the sharing economy, think about ad tech, think about online services companies and e-commerce companies, all these companies that have basically been birthed in the last 10, 15 years of the world that oftentimes rely heavily on a supplier network. Now, that's a great market. It's heavily VC funded, ridiculously fast growth. Some of the largest companies in the world now, or largest companies, at least in the tech space, are pretty much dominating that space. So it's great. However, think of the drop downs, think of like content syndication vendors, think of list vendors out there. Not one of them has even an e-commerce category, let alone sharing economy, let alone ad tech, let alone online services. So you can't just go out and buy those lists, or you can't just easily go out and run a efficient program to target those folks using a typical drop down that maybe a content syndication vendor like Netline would have. So you have to find other tactics to find that market efficiently. Precise market, and it's difficult to find. Those are the first 2 bullets. On top of that, we want to engage as much as possible with our priority accounts. There's many digital economy companies out there. We've built a list now of about 3,500 companies in that space. However, not all target account companies are created equal, and you want to prioritize that list and focus on the top folks in the space. On top of that, because that's the 3,500 kind of target, we need to get in front of the people early on, even if they're not ready to buy yet. We want to make sure that when it's a top target company in that digital economy space and they've grown up, that they already know about Tipalti, and that when they're looking to automate their supplier payment operations, they know that we're the system to go to at that point. So we want to get to people early. We also want to prioritize the top folks so we can put more effort and money and focus on them from both a sales and marketing perspective. And then the fifth point there is relevance. On top of getting your brand in front of the right folks early and late and prioritizing how much time and money and effort you spend, you also ideally with that data can personalize that experience. So I'll give you a few examples. If we're talking to an ad network instead of a share economy company, if we're trying to target Airbnb, what they call their suppliers are drivers. And if we're going to talk to them efficiently, and I want to get to the CFO or the controller at that company, I want to talk to them as drivers, because likely when they talk about this as a problem internally, that's what they're going to refer to their suppliers as. On the other hand, if we're talking to an ad tech company, they're likely going to call them publishers. And if we're talking to an e-commerce company, they're likely going to call them suppliers. So just that tweak of wording increases relevance, as well as the logos we present and the landing page we present and such. And you can do the target account marketing when done right. It's actually a highly effective tool to personalize the experience and improve conversion rate. And finally, the rest of it is about focus. And so while there's many tactics we use that have very good ROI, many tactics in marketing, as we all know, don't. And so if I can focus my resource on the right accounts that both sales and marketing have agreed to, and know that even if it doesn't always generate a lead per se, or even a nurture lead, that we're at least engaging and moving people forward that are the right companies, we know we're spending our money and time in the right ways. And certainly it helps with aligning with marketing, align with the CEO, and the such. And finally, 4 years ago, maybe targeted account marketing would have been a part of the mix, but it might not have been as big a part because the technologies, the right sets of technology that enable it nowadays, they weren't available 4 years ago. And so that really makes this a more important and a more important and capable experience. So I'll talk now and kind of go a little deeper on the next slide about how we approach this problem. So the first step I'd kind of recommend is you have to focus on building that target account list. You can focus on ads, email marketing, all these programs, but if you don't have a great target account list, you haven't built it out, if you haven't aligned with sales, if you haven't prioritized it, you're wasting your time, and you might as well not go there. Start with the target account list, build it out. There's different approaches to how to build that. Some sales orgs or marketing or company orgs, they just go to the sales department and say, build it out. Each rep, you get 50, add 50 to list, pour them on there, and we'll try and find contacts for you later and the such. In our case, I took an opposite approach, and it's one I advocate for, but I believe that marketing should take the lead often with building the target account list. I think with the technology and tools, we tend to be a little bit more on top of the latest technologies, the data that's out there. With digital marketing, that's obviously changed the game. There's a lot of tools there that gather this data for you. But because of a more systematic approach, a more metric-based approach that marketing takes, and the fact that we are in the driver's seat to know what technologies and data are out there, I believe that marketing should start with the target account list. And then, of course, you have to align with sales. You have to agree up front that we're going to build this target account approach across sales and marketing. Then I think marketing ideally should create the list, and maybe even take a swag at prioritizing it. In my case, I did. Then you bring in sales. They can prioritize that list even further. They have to allocate it to each rep on the team and determine which person is going to own that thing. And ultimately, they own prioritization as well as adding additional contacts or removing contacts and companies from the list. So once you do that, the next step is building out what Mark referred to as the buying center. But marketing and sales need to align on which are the personas, the right contacts at a company that should be supporting each target account, which are the folks, the 80-20, that you really want to get your brand in front of, that you want to try and engage with and convert and move down the funnel. And once you're aligned there, you really want to build out those targets at each of those companies. You really want 100% coverage, if at all possible, whatever the optimal coverage point is within that buying center at all those target accounts. And certainly prioritizing that target account list will help you there too, because you can spend more money and build a larger buying center at the top tier companies. And the ones at the bottom of the list, you can do 2 or 3 contacts maybe, or 1 or 2. Once you've done those pieces, then you've got to normalize it, and you see in this chart here. So I talked about target account selection, buying center as the top two steps. Then you've got the alignment with your Marketo, your Salesforce, your CRM systems, and that's a beast. There's systems out there. We're happening to use ZenIQ, which is outstanding. One of the reasons we selected ZenIQ is it not only normalizes the data and normalizes data across Salesforce, Marketo, accounts versus leads. There's various different approaches with how to manage that, but it's basically a systematic approach to normalize that data and ensure that basically your marketing team or sales team doesn't need to spend all their manual hours and probably error-prone hours fixing that data and migrating leads to opportunities and finding leads at different companies that should have been mapped as contacts and all that good stuff. We've used that product heavily. One of the reasons we selected ZenIQ is not only do they do that, they also help with reporting. And in my mind, marketing should be accountable. In modern day marketing, I think that's the expectation from the CEO. It should be the expectation by a CMO, and certainly it should be the expectation of the head of sales as well. And if you're accountable, while we've talked about the logic behind targeted account marketing, account-based marketing approach, ultimately, if you don't have ROI there, you're either going to get fired as a CMO or as a head of demand gen, or you probably got a pretty bad boss and your company's not going to go very far in the future. So you really need to build a metric system. And just like people build a metric system for inbound marketing and content marketing, if you don't have a way to analyze and prove performance in the long term for account-based marketing, you're in trouble. And we like the fact that I already had Marketo, I already had Salesforce, I have a bunch of other systems in my tech stack. I didn't want to buy another system for target account metrics and analysis and reporting, and then another system for normalization of the data and migration of data and making sure that we can build a great target account list with the right contacts, and we have it all intuitively organized within Salesforce for sales as well as for marketing. And this system really kind of streamlines the whole process. So that's been important to us. In terms of the program mix, we're very much in line with what Mark said from the data. Email marketing is a centerpiece here. If you build out the right context, you have a good email program, you start inputting relevance into that and sending people the right content based on who they are or what type of company they're at. And then you surround that with other programs. LinkedIn has many great accounts-based marketing tools. We personally use Terminus as a CRM retargeting and target account display medium. We think it's a very good system. We've done surveys, we've done live events, a number of different pieces in the marketing mix. So you surround that email focus, that database focus, that metric orientation, and the organization within your CRM and marketing system with all these marketing mediums. So that's been our approach, and hopefully that was helpful. And finally, on the demand gen side, we talked about account-based marketing, but at the same time, we also have our inbound marketing strategy, our content marketing strategy, and other key pieces of the marketing mix. So this shows you a picture of our general flow. We do build out a lot of data in our system, both for account-based marketing as well as non-account-based marketing. We call it dirt because it's not a lead. Even if Marketo and Salesforce insists on calling it a lead, it's not a lead until it responded to something. We call it dirt, but we certainly invest in dirt because dirt fuels the rest of the funnel. But I go crazy when I hear people internally call it leads because it's not a lead. That Salesforce and Marketo have an error in their system, in my opinion. Of course, there's new leads. New leads tend to not be account-based marketing heavy, although if you get them, awesome. And we have generated through the mix we've created plenty of new leads from account-based marketing. But you tend to see inbound marketing and content marketing be the driver of that part of the mix. On the other hand, there's something called nurtured leads. Nurtured lead, again, Salesforce, Marketo don't have them. They don't know how to measure them, or you have to hack the system to get them. But nurtured leads are as important, if not more important than new leads, particularly for account-based marketing, but maybe even for inbound and demand gen. Nurtured lead essentially, and at least my version of the definition, is when you've already had someone truly turn into a marketing lead from the company. One contact at one company. But when that same company, either that same contact or a new contact at the company now responds again, that's a nurture lead. It should be measured on a monthly basis and a daily basis by marketing. It should be attributed to sale. And certainly that's where your efforts on target account marketing are going to show up the largest, because wonderful if you create, let's say Tipalti gets Uber as a new lead. That's great, but I bet you they're not going to buy after that one response. They're probably going to respond 6, 7, 10 times before they purchase. And we should be measuring each of those engagements and the such. And what you really need to do that is you have to be measuring on an account-based level, a company-based level. And you have to be able to identify companies in your system, and then of those companies, are there contacts at those companies in your system that are re-responding? And by the way, which of those responses did actually move them down the funnel, and which were just tire kicking and actually didn't seem to be attributed to progress towards sale? And then finally, in the status, we go all the way down into opportunities in terms of our marketing. The only time we stop getting in front of a brand is when sales has marked them as an opportunity that's already in negotiating status. At that point, we say it's very far down the funnel, very close to sale. Let's not take the risk of interfering here, and we go away. But generally speaking, we talk throughout the entire funnel, beginning to end, and that's why it's important for us to focus on account-based marketing, because if we're going to be trying to talk to people from the beginning to end, we should be trying to talk to the right people, and not waste as much time on the other guys that are just tire kicking and less efficient fits for us. So that's kind of how Tipalti's taken the approach. Hopefully that was helpful for all of you out there that are thinking through, and I think the rest of our panelists will give you additional insights, and maybe there'll be a few disagreements too.
Well, maybe. You know, I like the reference of dirt there. I think we could maybe ask Srihari here, who's coming up next, to maybe create a new capability. It's dirt to account mapping, something like that.
Good one.
Hey, I wanted to point out one thing as he gets started here. I have seen this before. So midway on the home page, there's this registration for an ABM assessment report. And this is incredibly powerful. There's also no cost. It does require you to OAuth their system into your Salesforce system, but that's like the one thing that you really need to look at. But towards the end, he'll show one of the actual reports that comes from this. As Rob mentioned, there's insights that you can get from ZenIQ that I've never seen available elsewhere. So with that, Srihari, I'll pass that one to you.
Thank you, Mark, for that great introduction. There is 3 steps to ABM success, and continuing on taking Rob's cue on this, I think the first thing is getting measured by the right KPIs. True story, there was a senior director of marketing in this organization. There were 250 target accounts, and she was about to quit. And the reason was the CEO was measuring her by lead-based metrics. And though she was doing a lot for the accounts, it was not showing up, because 250 accounts is not a whole lot. But there was enormous activity engagement across the target accounts. And then she just changed the metrics, right, the KPIs, to be account-based metrics. And then the scenario totally changed. She's very happy there right now, and she is very successful. So I think the number one thing is please change, if ABM is the right thing for you, please change the KPIs to account-based KPIs. That's the first step. The second step is operate on account-level constructs, right? So for example, Rob was talking about stop emailing an opportunity, but it's people at an account that you're emailing. But can you operate at an account level and not at a lead level? So if leads are sitting separate from contacts in an account, you need to be able to map them. So you need to be able to operate on account level constructs. And the third thing is too many marketers try to do everything manually in ABM. So starting from maintaining the target lists, right? So let's say your target account list, target profile is anyone in North America between 50 million and 200 million in revenue. And there's a fast growing company that made the cut. Now, if you're maintaining those lists manually, you don't know that they showed up, right? Similarly, if there is in your target accounts, there is a new C-level exec that came in who is in your buying center, he just took up a job, you may have subscriptions to every contact database out there, but why do it manually, right? And there's several scenarios like this, which I will go through. So those are the 3 steps. Get measured by the right ABM KPIs. Second, operate on account level constructs and orchestrate success with ABM recipes. So let's talk about the first one. So what are the right KPIs? So there is coverage KPIs, which is you need to get credit for building the database in ABM, because that's a very key component of identifying how many people are at the buying center at each target account, and is there a primary contact identified for each account, and how many accounts exist with buying center gaps, and what is the trend, right? That is the most important thing. And you got to go to your CEO and show this, right, and get credit for this. The second one is the reach KPIs. How many accounts in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 lists are being touched by marketing? And how many of those people at each of those tiers have been sourced by marketing? And what is the trend line? And get credit for this, right? And engagement KPIs. So how many, what are the response rates in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 lists? Because if you take, in this example, you may not be able to see it very clearly, but this is a real example. The number of Salesforce accounts here is 9,000, but the tier 1 accounts are only 154. So if your response rates are really great on the tier 1 accounts, but they're really poor across all the Salesforce accounts, then that you need to highlight that, right? And this is what this report does. So what are the response rates to marketing outreach? What are what's going on in each tier from an online activity perspective, event participation, and how many opportunities were created in each tier after a marketing outreach, right? That gives you credit. The last one is how many deals, how many closed won, touched by marketing is another key KPI. And you can actually, if you want to see that data, your own data, to see where you stand, the ZenIQ ABM assessment does that for you. It'll give you this data. So the second piece is acting on account level constructs. So what are account level constructs? So can you take action at a target company list level, whether they are created as accounts in Salesforce or not? Are you able to take action at a target company list level? And I have several examples of this down in the presentation. The second is, can you identify buying centers at an account level? And let's go to the next one, Mark. And are you able to track and report account level metrics, right? So for example, engagement, right? If you have engagement at a lead level or lack thereof, what is the engagement at an account level, right? That might look better than if you take the individual contacts or leads, right? Are you able to track and report account level metrics? And the last 2 points, external company data and external contact data. And this is a key piece. If they operate in silos today, they are subscriptions to external data services, but are you able to bring them all in and integrate them with your Salesforce? Let's Go to the next slide, Mark.
People.
Go to the next slide. So the last piece is the orchestration piece. So let's take each of these examples. So if you remember, I was talking about account level constructs, right? So here's an example. If there is a new company matching the target profile, create an account in Salesforce, right? So automate this process, and then don't do it manually. Let's go to the next example. Here's another example. So if there is a missing director level and above in tier 1 accounts, right? So remember the account level construct example. So are you able to specify, I want only tier 1 accounts. I don't want everyone out there in the universe to pollute my Salesforce database, but if it's a tier 1 account, I want them added as a contact to Salesforce. Let's go to the next example. The third example here is if there's a new role in the buying center found, alert me. So this is a true story. There was a company selling HR software, and the CMO took up the job, and her viewpoint was, oh, it's VP and Director of HR we're going after. But soon she realized that she's not just going after just HR, but she's going after VP of People Development, VP of People Operations, VP of Talent Management, VP of Culture, and so on and so forth, not to mention Head of HR, right? So there's so many different ways now people, the titles vary by industry, by size, by geography, and it's very important to be alerted if there is a new set of leads that came in on your website with new roles, new titles that you never knew of, right? You need to be alerted about it so that you can add them to the buying center, right? So automate that process. This is a cross-channel example, and there are several examples of cross-channel. So let's take, Rob was talking about Terminus. If there is display ad engagement, there are people coming through display ads to your website, but they're not filling out a form, and you notice that it's not just one, but there is a repeat activity, but none of them is filling out a form. Why not target the top 2 contacts in those accounts that are showing high activity with a direct mail campaign, right? And this is a great example because many times display ads do not lead to a form fill, but why waste that investment? Continue to engage. So again, operate at the account level and orchestrate through these multiple channels at the account level. And here's another example. So if the last C-level engagement happened over 3 months ago in a tier 1 opportunity, alert me so that I can invite them to an event or organize. If there's enough in a certain area, I can organize an in-person event for them, right? Because C-level may not engage on digital channels. So these are some examples. You can literally create hundreds of these different recipes, and ABM is a team sport. You need sales also involved in it, and it is a multi-channel sport. And one of the problems is there's so many things you need to do at an account level and orchestrate and automate that process. So again, you can look at what recipes make sense for you, and here is another example of a heat map that you will get as a high-level view of where you stand from a coverage, reach, and engagement perspective in your buying center. So you'll get a heat map like this in your buying center with your data if you do the ABM assessment.
Thank you very much, Srinari. I wanted to say thank you once again, kind of emphasize the data here that you can get from ZenIQ is really quite amazing. So if you have the opportunity or the need, I'd highly recommend this report. It's free. Next, I'm going to introduce Rob Slaughter, and and also reintroduce to everybody the idea of a question. So we only have a couple so far, but we are here to answer them. So in your GoToWebinar interface, there's an option there for entering a question. Please do enter those, and we'll pick those up towards the end of the presentation. And with that, Roberto, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me on the panel today. And also I'd like to say, you know, I'm very happy I did not have to follow Rob Israq. I mean, that was a mic drop, my friend. I want to let you know that right now. So I'm busy taking notes and trying to figure out what I should learn from you on that one. So kudos. Yeah, so, you know, it's also nice to know that Rob and his team are the rare breeds out there. We're going to talk about, you know, I want to be brief because I want to get back to all this great tactical elements that we're talking about right here. But, you know, I'm going to be Debbie Downer here for a second. So, you know, Mark, if you can go to the next slide here, if you don't mind. I'm the strategy and planning guy. I'm the people that you don't want to talk to too much. You want to jump to execution, and I get it, you know. So in the world today of flipping my funnels and Pokemon, I'm the guy that comes in and wants to let's ground this in some bedrock. And if you don't mind flipping ahead again, Mark. But I think we all know, and I think Rob, the way he laid out his program, this stuff doesn't magically happen. You know, Rob and his team have put in a tremendous amount of work up front to get to where he is today. So, Mark, if you could flip one more ahead. So with Markestry, we're an organization that looks at marketing and sales enablement to drive revenue. That's our fundamental philosophy. You know, so we also think of ABM, and we're heavily involved in demand generation, but today we're specifically talking about ABM practices here. We take a little bit different approach than most of the others that you see out there. You know, we are fighting the fight against that a lot of marketers look at ABM right now as a tool. And I think that we've all seen this movie before, and it was called marketing automation. We're still fighting that battle a little bit. So we do a lot of work up front with sales and marketing teams. There's still a lot of distrust with sales to get alignment with marketing because they've gone through the marketing automation promise that really didn't realize itself in driving revenue. They're being told the same with marketing automation, and with ABM. And don't get me wrong, marketers are well-intended, but there's a lot of white noise out there. So we work with them on really how do we get everyone aligned properly, set expectations properly. We talk to a lot of organizations that, you know, not only can they not define the goals of the program they want to set up, but they certainly don't have any possible way of measuring the success of the outcome. So we, you know, Mark and I kid all the time, you know, we take a different approach. We do not want to hear from a marketer, I have 5,000 accounts that I want to run through an ABM program. That's not the way we operate. We take a little bit more of a bespoke approach to ABM. We really work with organizations to really target those high-value accounts, those key accounts, if you will, and then get very deep inside those accounts in a multi-channel approach to ABM. We've come from the opposite direction, and Mark and everyone and Rob and Shahar have hit on this, is that for us it's much more than display ads. We actually come from the other side where email is our champion, of course. We do a lot of work with SDRs, personalization, direct mail, and now we are really bringing the display ad channel into our campaigns for our clients. But beyond that, just like this slide will show you, you know, it's a lot of hard work. It's not easy, and we tell people it's not going to be easy. You're not going to take top of funnel, demand gen, lead gen marketers and turn them into ABM marketers overnight. They need to understand some underlying principles, concepts, and then once again, really the goal before we say off you go is to get them aligned properly and get to a point of bedrock that everyone's agreeable to set the expectation so one side or the other is not going to be disappointed if it, you know, doesn't work to what they think the program should run. So with that, you know, once again, we have an assessment and a workshop that we work with organizations to establish these principles with sales and marketing, and that's usually how we start with organizations. That we start with the workshop, we go over some fundamental truths or truisms, as Mark liked to say, and then that's how we help them build up their programs. If all the marketers I met were marketers from Tipalti, I'd be in trouble. So with that, I'm going to hand it over.
Hey, thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much for all of you for joining in today. Going to remind everybody about the questions within the GoToWebinar interface, and also to introduce Randy Watson, President and CEO of Bulldog Solutions. So take it away, Mr. Watson. I think I have.
Great.
There
Thanks,
we go.
Mark.
We have your slide up and microphone on.
The curse of going last is that you have the least amount of time, but the blessing is almost everything's already been said. Rob, thanks for dispelling the fact that I don't know dirt. So go ahead, Mark. So Bulldog, we're actually pretty excited about account-based marketing. I think it promises to bring incredible scale to kind of proven sales practice that's been around, from my perspective, for at least 40 years. And kind of the continued blurring of ad tech and martech provide a real opportunity for data-driven B2B marketing practitioners, which I think are some of the best marketers in the world, to create vastly different experiences for their customers and set them apart from their competitors. Let me talk about 4 kind of just key fundamentals for us, and then I'm going to jump into 8 examples, and I won't cover all of them, but I want to show you kind of 8 really practical ways that you can take some of the things you've been doing for years and really apply them or think about ABM maybe differently than you have before. Most of all of them have been talked about by one of the other panelists. So first of all, the buyer's journey just isn't linear. And to be honest, I don't know that it was ever completely linear, but I do know that the way that buyers sought out information and the control that the seller had over the definition of a consideration set and the way information was actually shared along the way used to at least give the illusion of a much more homogeneous and a much more progressive linear kind of pipeline. But I think things have changed, and they're never going back. And of course, the buyer-centered concept that everybody's talked about today is one of the biggest changes. I like the way Brent Adamson frames the question from CEB. Do you know your 5.4, the average number of buyers involved in a B2B purchase today, but also the buyer behaviors. Every business-to-business buyer is first of all a consumer, and consumers have completely changed the way they think about buying, and that's not going to be different when they're buying for their company than when they're buying for their individual self, and it's never going to go back. They can get information from sources other than the seller. They are going to look for that information. They're going to value that information more than the information they get from the seller. There are more experts available, whether they're real or perceived, than there have ever been before, and the information access has just never been greater, but it will be greater tomorrow. The second thing is that kind of identifying and marketing to accounts instead of leads is not ABM. It's not about it's about understanding and applying an account lens to the way you communicate through the journey. I like the way Rob talked about an account focus, but a lead-based communication. You can't communicate with false personalization kind of in your pre-funnel display ad-oriented communications, and then mysteriously become less knowledgeable about your buyer when you start communicating in something more personal like an email, or even much more personal like a sales call. The third one is it's not just about the buyer's journey, it's about the experience through the life cycle. There's a lot of talk about advocacy, and yes, advocacy is important because it's cheaper to keep a client, cross-sell a client, than it is to get a new client. But the most important thing about advocacy is it's the most relevant pre-funnel communications message, meaning that your customers and prospects care less about what you say about yourself and more about what others say about you. And then lastly, and this is where I'll kind of focus on today's panel, is it expands demand gen best practices. It does not replace them. And I think Rob made that point great as well. There's been a lot written about kind of programmatic ABM, but I think the most interesting opportunities go way beyond just the way you do account-based lead scoring, if you will, and more about how you expand all of your demand gen practices to have an ABM prism to them. And to be honest, I think agencies have been a little slow to adopt this, but let's look at practically what that means. So first of all, we talked about this one already, but I'm sorry, let me get to the right slide here. So the buyers group has expanded, and I don't want to give the impression that you have to have a 5.4 times however many communications messages you need in your nurture track. But I do want you to think about the fact that if you're identifying an expanded account-based list, and then when you drop down into all of your communications and nurture tracks, you have a place for 1 or 2 personas to go, and you're not at least thinking about what's the engagement that you're getting through your account-based marketing communications, and how are you using that? And you're really not going to get all the benefit that you could be getting. The sales and marketing alignment has been around for a long time. I like the way we talked about that earlier. We've had a 9-point methodology for over 5 years, but the truth of the matter is the alignment that happens now in the account identification process and identifying who the buying center is creates the opportunity for a much richer engagement. And I think that's the reason why, surveys like Lean Data last year showing that there's 20% more likely to have trust between sales and marketing and alignment around goals, and 25% more likely that sales is going to follow up on the actual leads. I don't want to talk a lot about personas, but we talked about that a little bit earlier, but I really do want to just challenge you to think about a bi-directional impact of what you learn about who you're engaging with, both in your ABM programs and your ABM activities, as well as what you're seeing within your often more detailed and more richer definition of what your personas, themes, and message maps look like. Lead scoring is one that I'm particularly excited about that we haven't talked a tremendous amount about today, but the implications of taking account level data and using that to score individual contacts and to change the way you're communicating or the way you're routing those leads based on that broader account-based activity, I think is real exciting. I think the demand-based and Oracle Marketing Cloud announcement earlier this year is going to provide a lot of opportunity, and I think there's more and more data to be pulled into that equation as we move forward. Data quality and marketability, won't touch on this one too much. I know Sahari talked about this, but the way you think about your data and the reach of your data and the enhancement of the contacts that you have and the expansion of those contacts and the marketability of those contacts, there's a lot of work that's been done on that in the demand gen space that we now just have an opportunity to apply across a larger prism. The next slide shows kind of just the depth and detail of a lot of complex communication architectures that exist out there across buyers' journeys, and I think B2B marketers should be thinking about every single point of engagement and how are you leveraging data that you could be collecting around the ABM-centric engagement? How are you pushing learnings that you have through your engagement in the demand gen funnel back into what you're doing in ABM is a great opportunity. Content is another one. Again, I said earlier that you can't have this really highly personal engagement when you're dealing with somebody anonymously, and then all of a sudden have this very generic engagement when you're dealing with them based on their personally identifiable information. So how you balance that out. We're big fans of using content that creates an engagement that exchanges value, and I think there's an opportunity to really leverage that on your ABM programs as well. Take what you learn and apply it further down the journey in order to create differentiation. And then lastly, just testing and optimization. The scale of engagement that you're able to create within the ABM, even if it's just anonymous and even if it's just display, just creates this phenomenal opportunity to learn more about what triggers engagement when you're dealing with a specific audience. You've got to pull that into what you're testing and how you're optimizing your other programs as well, or you're just missing out on this tremendous opportunity. So I know I went through that quickly. I really just wanted to show that everything you're doing on the demand gen side has some way to apply learnings both bidirectionally with what you're doing on ABM, and that's what kind of we as an agency are most jazzed about.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed the conversation today. Just looking at the flow, we started with a little bit of research and some high-level ideas, moved into case study, like how does this stuff start to look with somebody who's really done well with bringing up an ABM program, to underlying technologies that enable these starting points from the right basis, and then to C-level leaders at large agencies who work with clients to deploy these types of ideas. So that's been the flow of the content today. And one of the things I was going to just bring back up before I ask a couple of questions, and this is, I think, both to Randy and Rob there, the McKinsey research that I literally found it yesterday afternoon, and I pointed to it earlier in my presentation, that people that have the right experience in working with an organization are 5.2 times, not 5.2%, the 5.2 times more likely to do business with an organization with the right customer experience, that customers use on average 6 channels to try to communicate with a vendor before they do business with them, and that 2/3 of people are frustrated and dissatisfied with the engagement that they get across those channels today. The opportunity is immense, and I think part of the message today is ABM starts from a CRM issue and then extends to channels that you communicate in today, and then to increasingly new channels that you're going to build on top of that over time. And with that, I have a couple of questions I wanted to throw out. And the first one is directly along what I just mentioned. How should you organize your CRM for ABM? What's different in an ABM world from a CRM perspective? I'll float that one out there. First to raise a hand visually, I'll pass the cue. Hey, there's Rob.
Hey, guys. So I think it depends. So if you're a company that has a 100% target account approach to market, let's say you have in our case, we had 3,000 target accounts, but there's a ton of demand. We're finding an increasing market beyond that 3,000, and so we had to have both funnels working in parallel. But there are some companies out there that are 100% account-based marketing, where it's a finite universe and they literally know every company in that universe. In that case, you really, in my experience, just standardizing an opportunity and account-based model with contacts in between. If you're a case more like Topology, where you're balancing these two mixes in parallel, I think you want there's parts of the CRM system that work optimally for reporting from a flow perspective with a lead-based model, but certainly as soon as you find target accounts and certainly opportunities and the such, you want to take all your leads and migrate them almost instantly over to the account to merge with the contacts, so that one rep can own that entire buying team within those accounts. So I think that from my perspective, it depends on your business model.
I like what you had brought up there, which is probably one of the more enabling areas for marketing to work with sales, right? So, the way that you're doing these handoffs with those contacts would naturally form those relationships. Srihari, I bet from the work that you do around the building and targeting and measuring against discrete the buying center within organizations, you might have some POV here as well. Can you share?
Yeah. So what I would say is there's a lot in the data that you already have, and if you actually analyze the data and have a system that can make sense of the data, you can derive enormous insights both from the behavioral patterns of sales and how people are behaving, what kinds of companies. So that's all I would say. I would say look at the data you already have and see how you can use it and leverage it and be data-driven.
I have another question that came up.
Hey, Mark?
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to say on that point, I agree with Rob that there's probably not a one-size-fits-all. I think it's as important not just how you organize your CRM, but how you've integrated your CRM with the other systems that you're using. I like the picture that you had earlier, whether it's the systems you're using to drive ABM, the systems that you're using to source data or enhance data, the systems that you're using to drive marketing automation, how you're managing your tags on your website and your microsite. I mean, I think it's the integration of a number of different systems that allow you to drive kind of a more integrated and a more intelligent series of conversations and communications than necessarily just the one right way to organize your CRM.
Yeah. And if I could add one thing on top of that too, I think that we've seen a lot of ahas by the clients that we work with when we do build out these buying centers, not only from the fact of who they should target, and we talk about buyers and influencers, but also they have to take a hard look at like what's really in my CRM. Who are these people? Are they relevant to what we're trying to accomplish? And that's another secondary benefit.
Excellent. I had another question here around examples of effective ABM programs. Rob, you mentioned a couple of things that you were driving from existing channels, and I know in conversations with your team before, there's an example of a large financial institution and highly targeted buyer center email. You want to share just a little bit about how people can think of using those existing channels as a precursor to building additional channels in the future?
Well, yeah, I think so. Like you said, when looking at the insights, and I think that case in particular, and the emails that we were leveraging and sending out, what we found is that the engagement, and this is something the client, just because of bandwidth issues, would never have been able to pull the insight from. But we noticed that the interactions on the landing pages that were being driven by the emails was 100% mobile. And it was something they were not putting any money into at all. There was no mobile marketing that they were doing. And this was one of the fantastic insights that we were able to provide to them, and then really start to build out a whole other channel that they had never thought of before.
Randy, how about yourself? I saw a lot of creative content and things like that. What are you using with that content, maybe as a staging of touches that you're an example that you've used with the client?
Yeah, well, like I said, we're big advocates of trying to introduce content at various places in the interaction where you're going to exchange value with the prospect, where they're going to take an assessment, they're going to do something, could be heavy, could be light, and out of that they're going to see value in doing that because it's going to tell them something about themselves or how they compare to other people, or whether or not they're thinking about their problem the right way. But at the same time, our customer, the seller, is going to learn something that allows them to differentiate further down the path. I think when you think about ABM, you have this great opportunity for all of these often anonymous interactions, but then how do you get that same benefit throughout the rest of the journey of those anonymous interactions? So I think that's one of the really challenging opportunities for us as we help our clients work through the integration of ABM and their demand gen.
So it sounds like there's an issue of being able to scale recognition and insight. And Srihari, I bet recipes, some of the stuff you were showing earlier sounds like it could impact that, to scale the ability of a marketer to empower the insight to move across channels. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So recipes, the orchestration is actually easier than you think. It is because you operate at, because all the behavioral data is in either your CRM system or your marketing automation system and the web analytics, and all the execution systems themselves act on lists either from the CRM system or the marketing automation system. So I would say orchestration is a key piece, and you're probably already doing everything on all the channels on the ABM programs, but what's missing is the orchestration piece.
We're past the top of the hour, but I wanted to thank our speakers and those who stayed with us, which is quite a large number. So happy to have had another sold-out event the summer of ABM. So happy to have had such great speakers. I love hearing case studies, and I think this topic itself is one that most marketers can strongly benefit from. So thank you to everybody for your commitment in making this happen, and I appreciate it so very much, and hope you have a great day.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.